Fascinating story from the countryside. Michael Shifter joining us now. He's the president of the Inter-American Dialogue, also a professor at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. Just watching Sean's story, you know, we focus so much on policy and the presidents and the politicians, but it really comes down to the people. Give me your sense of the people of Cuba and how they're embracing this week, because it really is remarkable.
Well, the people of Cuba are extremely excited, hopeful, but they're also realistic. And they know that change is not going to happen quickly. It's going to be slow. We've seen since diplomatic relations have established, a lot of Cubans have left the country. They like this change, but they don't want to wait around too long because they know that there'll be small steps, and I think that's what we're seeing. But I think it's a positive direction. The trend is right. And you can see that the Cubans are hopeful that the country will develop and will experience economic change because they've really gone through a very, very difficult period.
Michael Voss was talking about the body language of these two leaders after they emerged. You know, they thought it would be tense, but they seemed like they were pretty relaxed. You've actually been able to kind of witness this relationship as it built. You were in Panama. Describe for me what that was like to watch these two leaders together, and talk to me about that arc. What do you see in terms of the relationship of these two men?
Well, I think they both share a sort of sense of pragmatism. Unlike Fidel Castro, Raul's older brother, Raul came in 2008 and really as a pragmatist. And Obama came in shortly after that. They kind of coincided, both coming into office, also more pragmatic than his predecessor, George W. Bush, in some ways. And so I think they first met at Nelson Mandela's funeral. And then I saw them a year ago in Panama at the Summit of the Americas, and where they had really the first meeting, and you could tell that there was a will on both sides to make this relationship work. There was a sense that this was ridiculous, that the United States and Cuba were so estranged from each other that there was no relationship, and there was some joking back and forth. And Raul Castro made some jokes, and President Obama did as well. So there seemed to be some chemistry there, but obviously at the same time recognizing that there are real differences in the U.S. Political and economic system and the Cuban economic and political system, and both agree to disagree.
And both comfortable in their own skin. They give as good as they get. It was interesting watching the news conference. Raul Castro joining Obama. He was asked about human rights by an American reporter. He said, "Give me the list now of political prisoners to release. If there are political prisoners, they'll be free before nightfall." And then he was asked about the presidential contest in the United States, Trump versus Clinton, and he said, I don't vote in your country." I mean, it was very funny stuff. He handled people rather deftly. What were your thoughts as you were watching this? Because truly remarkable seeing these two leaders fielding questions together.
Well, I think that this reflects the openness that we're seeing in the relationship. I think it's very refreshing. I think it's very healthy in the relationship, and I think Raul Castro is feeling good about this change, and President Obama coming. And President Obama, of course, this is probably one of the most non-controversial aspects of his legacy. When he made this announcement in December of 2014, it was greeted with great enthusiasm, not only in Cuba and Latin America, but in the United States as well. People said, "Why didn't this happen before?" And I think that's the dominant attitude. And so that's what we're seeing. I think it's very, very positive to watch this press conference, and change is happening. There's no question about it.
It's a tiny island nation that feels like they've been taking the brunt of it for years, and they don't refer to it as embargo. It's the blockade. And he brought it up again today. You know, he wants it gone. He wants Guantanamo Bay back. And President Obama also talked about this, saying that, you know, he sees this embargo going away at some point. It's going to happen. But talk to me about that. Is the genie out of the bottle? Is there a way to undo what's happened, or is the momentum shifting now?
I think the purpose of this visit is to make the normalization process irreversible, and to cement it and to consolidate it. I think that's what President Obama wants to do. He knows that his term ends next January, and he wants to go as far as he possibly can. And I think he's going to achieve that. My sense is that there is momentum. My sense is that especially if the Cubans respond positively to some of the opening in the United States, some of the greater interest in investing and trading with Cuba, this is going to be very, very far along. And the business interests in the United States support this policy. There's all the polls show, including Cuban Americans, who had been opposed to the policy support the policy. So President Obama said the other day that whoever wins in November, he thinks under the next administration, the embargo will be removed, and I agree with him.
And there's so much that separates these two countries over the years, but the baseball game tomorrow, emblematic of what brings both of these countries together in many senses. What's your number one takeaway from this trip?
Well, I think my number one takeaway so far is that the soft power in this really works. That President Obama, for 50 years there was a quid pro quo. The United States said we're not going to budge unless the Cubans become democratic. That didn't work. That was a perfect failure. Obama says let's try something else. And we don't know if it's going to be a total success by some standards, but we see things are happening and things are moving. I think that's very important. I think the most important, what I'm most interested in is going to be President Obama's speech tomorrow. I think in the theater, I think we're going to hear some interesting message to the Cuban people and to the world about his vision and how things are moving forward. I think that's going to be the most memorable part of this trip.
Michael, thanks so much for coming in. Certainly appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.